Flight attendant refuses to serve black woman. Then the airline's owner steps in, and it's her. At Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, flight delays and crowded lines spell the usual chaos, but for one woman, a single flight changes everything. Tensions come to a head when a flight attendant brazenly refuses to serve her, brushing her off for no reason other than her appearance. Passengers watch in stunned disbelief as the situation escalates. But behind the unassuming smile of the woman so callously dismissed hides a monumental secret. She is the newly installed owner of the very airline that employs her tormentor. The revelations about to unfold will send shockwaves through the cabin, the airline, and beyond, proving that prejudice always carries a steep price. Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport was teeming with its usual hum, thousands of travelers navigating endless corridors, bright electronic boards, flashing flight updates, and overhead announcements echoing through the colossal atrium. It was a Wednesday morning, early enough that some passengers still clutched take-out coffee cups while rubbing sleep from their eyes. Stepping out of a sleek black SUV, Morgan Yates surveyed the frenetic terminal. At first glance, she appeared to be just another traveler, a tall, poised black woman in her late 30s, clad in simple slacks and a fitted blazer. Slung over her shoulder was a modest carry-on, and she wheeled a compact suitcase with the other hand. Only her composure hinted at something deeper, an unspoken authority that belied her casual attire. Morgan had arrived incognito. As the newly appointed owner and CEO of a rapidly expanding regional airline called Skinova Air, she was known among aviation insiders but not necessarily recognized by everyday travelers. She had intentionally chosen to travel as a regular passenger to inspect her airline services from the inside. Today's flight to Boston was a quiet test of her company's values, customer service, and overall operational efficiency. She'd done this before in other parts of the country, slipping onto planes unannounced to see how employees really behaved. Strolling through the check-in area, Morgan offered a polite good morning to a desk agent, who handed her a boarding pass without fanfare. She had used her married name, Morgan Fraser, to ensure staff wouldn't suspect her true identity. Her seat was in economy class, deliberately chosen. After all, if you want to see how your airline truly treats people, you have to experience the most common passenger perspective. She paused at a window overlooking the tarmac, watching ground crews prep planes. She felt a swell of pride. In under 5 years, Skinova Air had grown from a small commuter fleet to a contender in several U.S. markets, bridging underserved routes with new planes and promising frequent flights. Morgan's acquisition of the company, supported by a group of investors, was meant to usher in a new era, better training, better ethics, and stronger community involvement. Yet as she sipped from her coffee cup, Morgan knew no amount of corporate strategies or sleek marketing campaigns could replace the importance of frontline experiences. If the employees on this flight demonstrated genuine care for their passengers, that would confirm she was guiding the airline in the right direction. Little did she realize that before the day was out, she would witness a moment of blatant discrimination from one of her own flight attendants, an event that would put everything she believed about leadership, justice, and karma to the ultimate test. Morgan navigated the sprawling terminal until she spotted Gate 17 designated for Skinova Air Flight 221 to Boston. A handful of passengers had already congregated in the seating area, some tapping away on laptops, others casting anxious glances at the overhead display for any sign of a delay. She took a seat near the back corner, her posture relaxed yet alert. Her gaze flicked from the gate agents at the podium to the travelers forming tentative lines even before boarding was called. She overheard an older couple in a lively debate about whether they'd have time to grab a cinnamon roll from a nearby kiosk. A young father struggled to calm his toddler's tantrum over a lost toy. All around her was the standard chaos of travel, but Morgan noted every detail. That's when she saw a member of the cabin crew stride through the crowd, a flight attendant named Tasha Caldwell. She wore the Skynova Air uniform navy slacks with a matching blazer and a name tag pinned neatly on her lapel. Morgan recognized the name from employee rosters, though she'd never met Tasha personally. The flight attendant radiated a certain tension, her brisk walk exuding impatience as she approached the gate agent. Morgan caught snippets of a conversation. "Tasha, is she checked in yet? Seat 10B. Agent, yes, all passengers are accounted for. We just got word we're boarding in 10 minutes. Tasha exhaled loudly, a slight roll of her eyes. She leaned in, whispering something about how she hoped this flight wouldn't be too full. The gate agent politely nodded, but Morgan sensed an undercurrent of annoyance in Tasha's demeanor. Some flight attendants, especially those under stress, ended up taking out frustrations on passengers. Morgan wondered if Tasha might be one of them. A few moments later, Tasha pivoted and scanned the waiting area. Her eyes flicked over Morgan and the other passengers without lingering. Morgan sank a bit into her seat, content to remain invisible. If Tasha ended up being a shining example of empathy, that would be wonderful news. If not, well, Morgan was prepared to deal with that reality. The overhead speaker crackled to life. "Attention passengers for Skynova Air Flight 221 to Boston. We will begin boarding in just a few moments with pre-boarding for families and those needing extra assistance." The standard routine was about to unfold. Morgan allowed herself a small smile of anticipation. Over the years, she had found these secret evaluations to be both enlightening and humbling. She intended to see if Tasha and the rest of the crew would treat each traveler with courtesy, or if corners would be cut. What she didn't know was that Tasha's frustrations ran deeper than just a busy shift. And soon, Tasha's attitude would cross a line, one that would thrust Morgan into a position she never dreamed she'd have to handle, calling out blatant discrimination in her own airline and deciding how harsh the consequences should be. Boarding began, and Morgan deliberately waited until her group was called Boarding Group 3. She watched as first-class passengers, families with small children, and frequent flyers streamed onto the jet bridge. A few confused travelers in the wrong zone hovered by the gate, only to be politely redirected by the agent. When her turn arrived, Morgan presented her boarding pass. The young gate agent gave a polite nod, scanning the pass with a beep. No fanfare. Perfect, Morgan thought. She wanted anonymity intact. The interior of the Boeing 737 was well lit, the overhead bins still open for last-minute stowing of luggage. A second flight attendant, a middle-aged man named Dennis, stood near the front greeting passengers. "Welcome aboard." "Watch your step," he repeated with mechanical politeness. Morgan smiled at him, to which he responded with a quick nod. She strolled down the aisle, passing rows filled with all sorts of travelers, business people in suits. A group of college friends snapping selfies, an older gentleman flipping through the in-flight magazine. Morgan found her assigned seat in row 10 near the middle of the plane, 10A, a window seat. Her seatmate had not yet arrived, so she slipped in and tucked her carry-on beneath the seat in front. Across the aisle, Tasha Caldwell stood assisting a passenger with overhead bin space. Tasha's face showed mild impatience, though she offered a forced smile. "We've got room a few rows down," she told the passenger. "We need to speed up the aisle flow." Morgan settled in, fastening her seatbelt, her heart beating with a subtle thrill of anticipation. In her mind, she was simply another traveler. Would Tasha or Dennis treat her differently if they knew she owned Skynova? She doubted it. Most employees had never even seen her photo. Moments later, a younger black woman with braided hair arrived at the row behind Morgan, seat 11C. She carried a large purse and balanced a tote bag over one shoulder. Judging by her labored breath, she dashed through the terminal. "Finally made it," she murmured, stowing her tote. Her seatmates, already seated, scooted aside with minimal fuss. Tasha stepped up behind her. "Monsieur AM, if your bag doesn't fit, we need to check it," she said curtly. The woman calmly demonstrated that her tote slipped into the overhead bin with no trouble. Tasha pursed her lips. "Right, well, hurry and sit. We're closing the door soon." Morgan noticed the passenger's face flicker with a confused frown. Tasha's tone was borderline rude. Even so, the woman just nodded and took her seat. A few minutes later, the cabin door sealed, the safety demonstration began, and the plane taxied out. As the engines roared for takeoff, Morgan breathed in the familiar sense of a flight beginning. The seatbelt sign lit overhead, and Tasha began distributing announcements via the intercom in that same clipped tone. Morgan tried to relax, but she couldn't shake an uneasy feeling. She'd encountered flight attendants who were stressed or overworked, but Tasha seemed resentful. Had something specific triggered it, or was Tasha simply in the wrong job? Morgan had no idea that Tasha's attitude would soon escalate from short-tempered to outright discriminatory. And the target of that behavior would be the young black woman in row 11, pushing Morgan's personal and professional boundaries to a critical crossroads. At 30,000 feet, the cabin settled into the familiar hush that follows a smooth takeoff. Outside, a tapestry of white clouds drifted against a pale blue sky. Inside, a soft ping rang out, and the seatbelt sign switched off. Passengers stretched, unbuckled, and began rummaging for reading material or laptops. Morgan, seated in row 10 by the window, kept her gaze roving, taking in every detail. On this flight to Boston, the cabin crew consisted of 2 flight attendants, Dennis, who appeared calm and methodical, and Tasha Caldwell, whose taut expression and clipped body language suggested either stress or impatience, or maybe both. Morgan, as Skynova Air's new owner, had boarded anonymously, determined to see how her employees behaved when they believed no one important was watching. A short while after takeoff, Dennis rolled a beverage cart from the front galley, announcing, "We'll be starting in flight service now. Please let us know if you'd like coffee, tea, soda, or juice." His voice was steady and professional, echoing just enough so folks in the forward rows could hear. Meanwhile, Tasha positioned herself behind him, organizing cups, napkins, and small snack packs, peanuts, cookies, and the ever-popular pretzels. Morgan noticed that Tasha seemed on edge, darting quick looks at her watch, as if worried they might fall behind schedule. Occasionally, Tasha would urge Dennis to move faster or remind him curtly about something trivial like the number of cups left in the cart. He responded with patient nods, but Morgan could see tension brewing. When Dennis began serving the first few rows, the process seemed routine enough. Passengers requested soft drinks or water, some asked for snacks. Dennis provided them without fuss, handing out peanuts or pretzels in small foil packets, accompanied by the standard cocktail napkins. Tasha hovered close, refilling the cart's supply as they progressed. Row 10 was next Morgan's row. Dennis greeted her with a polite half-smile. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Anything to drink?" "I'd love a ginger ale, please," Morgan replied. She added, "And if it's not a bother, pretzels would be great too." Dennis immediately nodded. "Absolutely." He reached into the cart, handed her a small can of ginger ale, a plastic cup with ice, and a packet of pretzels. Tasha glanced over briefly, but said nothing. Morgan thanked him, making sure to note how straightforward the service was in her row. Next, the cart trundled on to row 11. There sat a younger black woman with neat braids, a warm smile, and what looked like a slightly anxious demeanor. She had boarded the plane, rushed and out of breath, though she now seemed settled. Morgan's attention riveted on this moment. An instinct told her to pay close attention. Dennis offered the standard greeting, "Good afternoon. Anything I can get you to drink?" The woman looked relieved to be acknowledged. "Could I have water, please? And maybe a bag of pretzels if you still have some?" At that precise moment, Tasha leaned over Dennis's shoulder, effectively cutting him off before he could respond. "We're only doing drinks right now," Tasha said crisply. "Snacks come later in the service." A flicker of confusion passed over the woman's face. "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we could ask now." The row ahead of me, she gestured vaguely, referencing Morgan's row, though she didn't specify Morgan herself. I noticed them getting snacks already. Tasha's lips thinned. "That's first class," she declared, waving a dismissive hand. "They're served earlier. Economy's just on beverages, ma'am." Morgan felt a stab of shock. She had just been served pretzels in economy. She was only one row ahead. It wasn't first class at all. Meanwhile, Dennis, clearly caught off guard, gave Tasha a questioning glance. Tasha, without waiting for more discussion, pushed the cart forward, forcing Dennis to move along. The black woman in row 11 frowned. She mouthed a thank you to Dennis as he hurriedly handed her a plastic cup of water, but there was no time to clarify the pretzel situation. A few rows behind them, a couple of passengers exchanged perplexed looks. Some had heard Tasha's comment and knew it was incorrect. Morgan's pulse quickened with irritation. "That's flat-out dishonest," she thought. And for what reason? As far as she could see, the passenger had been nothing but polite. Worse, Tasha's tone carried an undercurrent of condescension, implying that this woman's request was somehow invalid. One row ahead, in 9C, an older gentleman asked for ginger ale and pretzels, and Dennis complied without hesitation. Morgan watched Tasha's face. Her jaw clenched, but she said nothing to contradict Dennis. "So there's no shortage of pretzels." Tasha singled out that woman in row 11, Morgan realized. Within minutes, the cart was past row 11, leaving the woman behind with only a cup of water. She stared at the seat back in front of her, shoulders slumped. Morgan could practically feel the embarrassment radiating off her. It was subtle, yet unmistakable, a quiet humiliation inflicted for no valid reason. Morgan's mind churned. Why had Tasha refused? Stress? Implicit bias? Outright racism? Whatever the cause, it clashed violently with Skynova's customer-first policy. Morgan had come incognito to observe real passenger crew interactions, but even she hadn't expected such overt discrimination from her own staff. She resolved to watch further, to ensure she wasn't misunderstanding the scenario. After all, it was theoretically possible Tasha had made a one-time mistake with the new service pattern. Maybe she'd rectify it, but Morgan doubted it. Tasha's stiff posture and the curt tone she used with that passenger suggested something more insidious. Before long, the cart looped back toward the galley, Tasha whispering something hurriedly to Dennis about keeping an eye on certain rows. Dennis looked puzzled, but nodded and continued collecting cups. As Tasha stocked napkins and small condiment packages for the next round of service, Morgan decided to speak up soon, quietly at first, to see if Tasha would correct her own behavior. If not, Morgan would be forced to escalate. Tasha might see herself as just another overstretched flight attendant dealing with too many demands. But from Morgan's vantage point, Tasha was crossing a line that undermined everything. Skynova Air claimed to represent hospitality, fairness, and the joy of flight. If Tasha wouldn't shape up, Morgan would have to confront her in a way that Tasha could never anticipate. And the woman in row 11C, she continued to sip her water, eyes resolutely facing forward. Morgan noticed her wiping the corner of her eye, as though staving off tears of frustration. That small gesture ignited a spark of resolve in Morgan. She wouldn't let the woman remain mistreated. This was Morgan's airline, after all, And it was about time Tasha Caldwell learned what happens when you deny dignity to a passenger, especially if that passenger is within earshot of the airline's owner. 20 minutes passed, and Tasha and Dennis returned to the galley to prep for the official snack service. The cabin lights dimmed slightly, and a hush fell as passengers settled in. Some watched the overhead screens or dozed off, but Morgan stayed alert, noticing how Tasha avoided eye contact with certain passengers, particularly the young black woman in row 11C. Finally, Tasha announced snack service over the intercom, adopting a tone that sounded rehearsed but lacked warmth. Morgan watched as Tasha's cart approached row 11. The woman in 11C, apparently still a bit shaken, politely asked for water again and a bag of pretzels if possible. To Morgan's dismay, Tasha rolled her eyes, as if the request itself was an annoyance. She gave the passenger a curt look. "We only have peanuts and cookies left. No pretzels. Sorry." Then Tasha turned her back, busying herself with the cart. Morgan saw the tray above Tasha's cart, stacked with pretzel bags. She clenched her jaw. She's lying to the passenger. A man in row 10 asked for pretzels right afterward and was handed a bag without issue. The woman in 11C seemed stunned. She glanced around, noticing how other passengers were indeed receiving pretzels. Another traveller in row 11, who had asked for peanuts, now rummaged through his snack, quietly eyeing the uneasy exchange. Morgan's anger flared. This was not a simple oversight or mix-up. Tasha was deliberately refusing to serve the woman for reasons that seemed clearly tied to some personal bias. Maybe it was racism, maybe it was something else, but the outcome was undeniably discriminatory. This is my airline, Morgan thought. I can't let this stand. But she also needed to witness if Tasha's behavior would escalate. Was the passenger in 11C going to push back? The woman looked as though she wanted to speak up, but her shoulders slumped. She quietly sipped her water, refusing to make a scene. Tasha continued down the aisle, handing out snacks and drinks with that same forced, polite expression. Morgan deliberated her next move. In her seat, she composed an email draft to her VP of Operations describing the incident. She added timestamps and row references. She wanted a record. But something gnawed at her heart. I need to address this in real time, not just after the fact. As Tasha reached the back galley, Morgan took a deep breath. She resolved to approach the flight attendant discreetly, under the guise of a concerned passenger. Maybe she could diffuse the tension or at least give Tasha a chance to correct her behavior. But if Tasha refuses to change, Morgan warned herself, the confrontation will become far more public and I won't stand for discrimination under my watch. Morgan unbuckled her seatbelt and stood, timing her move so she caught Tasha as the attendant restocked items in the rear galley. She navigated the narrow aisle, carefully stepping around a passenger returning from the restroom. Meanwhile, the cabin was relatively quiet. Many people were engrossed in their phones or chatting softly. When she reached the back, Morgan found Tasha alone, transferring snack packs from a storage cabinet to a cart drawer. The flight attendant stiffened at Morgan's approach. "Can I help you with something, ma'am?" Tasha asked, her tone guarded. Morgan kept her voice calm. "Yes, I have a concern. There's a passenger in row 11C who's asked twice for pretzels, and you told her they weren't available. But I saw pretzels on your cart. Is there a reason you're withholding them?" Tasha bristled, arms folding across her chest. "That's between me and the passenger. We only have limited stock, and certain items are allocated to different rows." Morgan's eyebrows rose. "Different rows? I'm in row 10. I got pretzels. The passenger right next to me did too. It seems inconsistent." Tasha's face reddened. "Look, we have protocols. Some passengers are more polite, some are rude. We don't have to serve rude passengers if they're causing a disruption." Morgan's heartbeat quickened. So that's her justification. She didn't seem rude. She only requested water and pretzels. I heard nothing disrespectful from her. MAAM, I'm not at liberty to share details of passenger interactions, but suffice it to say, she gave me attitude. We have the right to refuse service to anyone who's disrespectful or threatens safety. Morgan inhaled, forcing her tone to stay measured. I was in front of her. She wasn't being rude, not from what I saw. Tasha shrugged with an air of finality. I guess you didn't hear everything. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have other passengers to attend to. Morgan's anger simmered at Tasha's dismissive wave off. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. Tasha was doubling down on her behavior. Nonetheless, Morgan decided to give her one more chance to rectify it. Please serve that passenger the snack she requested. That's all I'm asking. Tasha's eyes narrowed. I'll serve who I see fit. Ma'am, you need to return to your seat. Morgan nodded slowly, fighting the urge to reveal her true authority right then. All right, she said, stepping aside. I hope you reconsider, because if this is discrimination, it's unacceptable. Tasha's expression darkened. Are you accusing me of racism? That's a serious claim. You have no proof. Morgan stared at her for a moment. I hope I'm mistaken, she replied quietly, then turned and walked back up the aisle. Adrenaline coursed through Morgan's veins. She'd given Tasha fair warning, and Tasha had effectively brushed her off. Now the question was, how far would Tasha go to maintain this facade? And at what point should Morgan reveal her identity, forcing Tasha to confront the consequences of her actions? Morgan returned to her seat, her thoughts racing. While she hoped Tasha might correct her course, the flight attendant's defensive posture suggested otherwise. Glancing over her shoulder, Morgan noticed the young woman in 11C flipping through a magazine, her face still clouded with hurt. The mismatch between her calm demeanor and Tasha's accusations of disrespect was glaring. The beverage cart emerged once again, this time manned by Dennis. He moved row by row, collecting trash and offering final drinks before the flight prepared for descent. When he reached row 11, the woman politely handed him an empty cup. Could I have a refill of water? She asked. Dennis nodded. Sure thing. He filled her cup from a pitcher. Then, almost as an afterthought, he offered her a bag of pretzels from the cart. The woman hesitated, clearly surprised, and accepted them with a soft thank you. She gave a relieved smile, as though a small justice had been served. Morgan saw Tasha watching from a distance, her lips pressed into a thin line. A flicker of annoyance crossed Tasha's face when she realized Dennis had given the woman the very snack Tasha had withheld. The entire exchange spoke volumes. Dennis either didn't know or didn't care about Tasha's stance, and that's a good sign, Morgan thought. While it was reassuring that the woman finally got what she wanted, the deeper problem still loomed. Tasha had refused service based on her personal bias, racially motivated or otherwise. That was enough to violate multiple codes of conduct at Skynova Air. Morgan typed a quick note on her phone. For Tasha, refused service to black woman multiple times, no valid reason. Dennis served her eventually. In any normal scenario, Morgan would forward this complaint to management. But she wasn't just any passenger. She was the airline's new owner. She had the power to decide Tasha's fate and shape the company's policies. The question was, should she address it directly right now, or wait until after landing? A quiet voice from behind her interrupted her train of thought. The woman in 11C tapped Morgan's shoulder gently. "Ma'am?" she whispered. "Thank you for speaking up earlier. I saw you talking to the flight attendant in the back. You didn't have to do that." Morgan turned, offering a warm smile. "I only did what was right." The woman gave a small nod. "It's not the first time I've been treated like that, but I appreciate you caring." With that, she sank back into her seat, sipping her water. Morgan's heart tightened. Not the first time. That reality stung. She resolved then and there to finalize a plan of action. The flight might be nearing its end, but the real drama was about to escalate. Tasha was about to learn that hiding behind a uniform can't shield you from accountability, especially when the passenger you've wronged holds the highest power in the airline. Within minutes, the captain's voice crackled over the PAR system. "We're beginning our initial descent into Boston Logan International Airport. Please ensure your seatbelts are fastened and tray tables up." Passengers around Morgan stirred, adjusting seats, closing laptops, and stretching. Morgan's mind was anything but calm. She replayed every interaction: Tasha's blatant refusal, her dismissive response, her lie about the snack stock. Meanwhile, the victim in 11C was preparing for landing as if nothing more could be done. Morgan could practically sense the quiet resignation, something she'd seen countless times in stories of racial bias. People learn to endure, even when it's unfair. "Not on my watch," Morgan vowed silently. She decided to confront Tasha directly once the plane parked at the gate, but before passengers disembarked. The thought of how Tasha would react made her uneasy, but the flight attendant had to face the truth. Morgan wanted Tasha to understand the gravity of her actions. As the plane descended, Tasha moved up the aisle, collecting stray cups. She paused at row 11, offering a terse, "Trash." The woman nodded, handing over a napkin. No eye contact was exchanged. The tension was palpable. Tasha continued forward without a word, ignoring Morgan's gaze in row 10. Morgan quickly jotted a text to her personal assistant: "Flight 221 from ATL to boss. Issue with FAR Tasha Caldwell. Stand by for urgent meeting with HR after landing." She hit send, then pocketed her phone. A smooth touchdown followed. The plane taxied to the gate, and the seat belt sign pinged off. Passengers stood, collecting bags. Morgan stood as well, but instead of retrieving her luggage, she lingered, allowing the eager crowd to shuffle out ahead. She locked eyes with the woman from 11C, who gave a polite nod. Morgan returned it, hoping to convey reassurance that she'd handle this. Once most travelers filed out, Dennis and Tasha were in the front galley, bidding farewell to passengers. Morgan stepped off to the side, waiting until the last passenger was gone. Tasha started to gather the seatbelt extenders, hardly noticing Morgan. Then Morgan cleared her throat. "Tasha Caldwell, right?" Morgan said, her tone firm but not shouting. Tasha turned, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. "Yes?" Morgan took a deep breath. "I'm Morgan Yates," she said, intentionally omitting her married name. "I'm the new owner of Sky Nova Air." The color drained from Tasha's face. She glanced at Dennis, who stood dumbfounded. "What? You? That can't be," Tasha stammered. Morgan lifted her carry-on, stepping closer. "I flew incognito to observe day-to-day operations. I saw everything that happened with the passenger in 11C. We need to talk." Tasha froze, eyes wide. Dennis looked between the two women, uncertain how to react. The hush in the cabin felt thick as a storm cloud about to break. Morgan locked her gaze on Tasha, fully prepared to deliver the accountability that Tasha had never anticipated. With the plane nearly empty, Morgan gestured for Tasha and Dennis to step into the forward galley, away from any lingering passengers or cleaning crew. Tasha looked like she wanted to bolt, but Morgan's calm yet steely demeanor held her in place. Once enclosed by the curtain, Morgan set her carry-on aside. "Tasha Caldwell," she began, voice steady, "I witnessed you refuse service to a passenger in row 11C multiple times. You claimed you were out of pretzels, but you weren't. You lied to her." Tasha's hands trembled. She was being rude, ma'am. She gave me an attitude, so I refused to serve her. That's within my rights, if a passenger is disruptive." Morgan raised an eyebrow. She never raised her voice or caused a disturbance. She simply asked for water and pretzels items we provide to all economy passengers. "Meanwhile, you gave me pretzels one row ahead." "Explain." Tasha fumbled for words. She stared at me in a hostile way. I felt threatened. I had to protect the comfort of other passengers. Dennis, who stood off to the side, cleared his throat. Ma'am, I was working the same row. She wasn't threatening. She was just a normal passenger. Tasha, what are you talking about? Tasha threw him a glare, as if betrayed. You don't know how it felt from my perspective. I've had incidents with passengers before. I was just being cautious. Morgan exhaled slowly. Cautious is refusing service, or calling the captain if there's a genuine threat. But that passenger did nothing. This looks a lot like discrimination, Tasha. Tasha's eyes welled with tears, though her voice had an edge. No, it's not that. Maybe she reminded me of someone else who was aggressive on a previous flight. I panicked. Morgan exchanged a glance with Dennis, who pursed his lips. It was clear Tasha was grasping for excuses. Morgan's frustration mounted, but she kept her tone measured. I'm sorry if you had past issues, but we can't treat every passenger of a certain background with suspicion or disrespect. This is unacceptable. Tasha's bravado deflated. She looked at Morgan pleadingly. Please don't fire me. This job is all I have. Morgan felt a twinge of compassion, but her resolve was firm. Tasha, you not only refused service, but lied about the snack availability. That passenger did nothing to warrant your response. I own this airline. My staff must uphold our standards of fairness. Right now, you've failed those standards. Tasha swallowed hard, tears threatening to spill. I messed up. I'm sorry. Morgan nodded, though her face was somber. Apologies are a start. But there must be consequences. You'll be placed on immediate suspension while we conduct a formal review. She turned to Dennis. Please contact our base supervisor. Tasha, you'll remain in Boston. We'll arrange a flight back after the review. Meanwhile, you are relieved of duty for the return leg. Tasha's eyes brimmed with tears as the full weight of Morgan's authority bore down on her. The hush in the galley was deafening. Morgan shouldered her carry-on, knowing this was just the beginning. Tomorrow, she thought, I'll speak to HR, the passenger, and the entire corporate team. Tasha would learn the hard way that prejudice has no place in her airline, no matter how good your excuses might be. Morgan stepped off the jet bridge into Boston Logan International Airport, feeling the weight of the confrontation still heavy in her chest. She had a slew of tasks ahead, contacting her senior HR manager, drafting an incident report, and possibly offering formal restitution to the passenger in row 11C. The wave of adrenaline that had fueled her confrontation with Tasha now receded, replaced by a steely resolve to see justice through. Within the hour, Morgan was in a quiet corner of the airport lounge, phone pressed to her ear. Her senior HR manager, Cynthia Liu, listened intently. We have a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination, Cynthia said. Tasha Caldwell's record shows no prior complaints, but that doesn't excuse her actions today. Morgan exhaled. Agreed. The passenger deserves an apology and more. We need to see if she wants compensation or a formal apology letter. I'll also want to talk to Tasha personally again once we gather statements from other witnesses. Cynthia hummed thoughtfully. We should do everything by the book. We can't be accused of ignoring or minimizing the incident. I'll draft an internal memo for staff, emphasizing our policy. And we'll schedule a meeting with Tasha next week. For now, we'll put her on paid suspension until we complete the review, as per policy. Morgan paced near the lounge window watching planes taxi. She also considered the possibility of a media leak. Cynthia, if this gets out publicly before we address it, it could spark a PR issue. I'll alert our communications team. We must be transparent, but also protect the passenger's privacy. Hanging up, Morgan spotted the very passenger from row 11C trudging through the corridor. She quickly waved to catch her attention. The woman approached, a trace of apprehension in her eyes. Hi, Morgan said gently. I'm Morgan Yates, the new owner of Skynova Air. I'm so sorry about everything that happened on the flight. The woman blinked. You own the airline? You were the one who stood up for me? Morgan nodded, offering a business card. Yes, that flight attendant's behavior was out of line. We're taking disciplinary action. A hint of relief passed over the woman's face. Thank you. I'm Amira Jones, by the way. I wasn't sure if complaining would do any good. Morgan's voice softened. It does. I'm personally making sure it does. If you have time, I'd like to hear your side in detail. We want to make this right through an apology and any necessary compensation. Amira glanced at her watch. I have a connecting flight soon, but maybe we can talk briefly. Morgan guided her to a quieter seating area. As they spoke, Morgan felt both anger and resolve, determined that this incident would lead to real change, not just internal memos. Tasha's fate was sealed. Her hateful or biased behavior would not go unchecked. And for Amira, Morgan intended to prove that Sky Nova Air would not only apologize, but genuinely commit to preventing such incidents in the future. Amira Jones settled into a seat across from Morgan in the bustling terminal, the fluorescent lights casting a weary glow. She had limited time before her next flight, but Morgan wanted to ensure she received a personal apology and reassurance that steps were being taken. Amira, Morgan began, I want you to know we value your experience and sincerely regret what you went through. If you're comfortable, I'd like to gather the specifics, dates, times, any remarks. Tasha made so we can create a complete record. Amira nodded. Sure, I boarded around 9:30 a.m. and sat in 11C. The flight attendant, Tasha, refused to give me pretzels and snapped at me when I asked for water a second time. She also claimed I was rude, which I wasn't. Morgan recorded each detail meticulously in her phone's note app. Thank you. Do you have any idea if other passengers noticed or recorded anything? Amira shrugged. People around me looked uncomfortable. One man offered me half his snack, but I was too embarrassed to accept. Morgan's chest tightened. I'm so sorry. That embarrassment is on us. Tasha is being suspended while we investigate fully. We also want to offer you a complimentary round-trip ticket on any Sky Nova Air flight in the future, plus a refund for today's journey. A mixture of relief and lingering frustration crossed Amira's face. I appreciate that. It doesn't erase what happened, but it helps. Morgan nodded. We also plan to hold mandatory training for all our flight crews, focusing on anti-discrimination and conflict resolution. This will be the first test of that new policy. Amira exhaled slowly. Well, if it stops this from happening to someone else, I'm glad. I've had incidents like this before, but never so blatant. Morgan offered a gentle smile. Our mission is to connect people. We can't stand for employees who do the opposite. Please know your complaint is taken seriously at the highest level. They exchanged contact information. Morgan promised to keep Amira updated on the final outcome of the investigation. As Amira left for her connecting flight, Morgan felt a mix of relief and a lingering pang of guilt. Why does this keep happening, even in my own airline? Heading out, Morgan dialed her communications director. She explained the basics. A flight attendant discriminated against a passenger. Immediate steps were being taken, and the passenger had been offered an apology plus compensation. Draft a statement for internal circulation, Morgan instructed. We'll keep it in our back pocket in case any reporters catch wind. Emphasize zero tolerance. After the call, Morgan dragged her carry-on to the rideshare pickup area, mind abuzz with next steps. She would convene with the executive team to ensure Tasha's suspension led to real accountability. But a deeper question gnawed at her. Could Tasha be just one of many with similar biases at Sky Nova? If so, Morgan had a bigger fight on her hands, one that would require reshaping an entire corporate culture. 2 days later, Morgan sat in her bright corner office at Sky Nova's Atlanta headquarters. The city skyline sprawled beyond her floor-to-ceiling windows. On her desk lay a stack of papers: Tasha Caldwell's employment history, the official incident report, and statements from Dennis and a couple of passengers. Everything pointed to a clear case of misconduct. At exactly 10:00 a.m., Tasha entered, escorted by Cynthia Liu from HR. Tasha's posture was subdued, her hands fidgeting. She looked exhausted, as though the weight of the past days had crushed her spirit. Morgan gestured to the chair opposite her desk. "Tasha, please sit." Cynthia took a seat as well, opening a folder labeled Caldwell Investigation. Tasha sank down, her expression one of resignation. Morgan began. "Tasha, we've completed our review. The evidence shows you refused service to Miss Amira Jones multiple times without justification and then lied about snack availability. We have multiple witnesses corroborating this. Do you have anything else to say?" Tasha's eyes brimmed with tears, but she kept her voice level. "I panicked. I thought she was giving me attitude, so I overreacted. I admit I messed up." Morgan folded her hands on the desk. "We've also found no record of Miss Jones exhibiting any rude or threatening behavior. When we asked your colleague Dennis, he said, Miss Jones was perfectly calm." Tasha's tears began rolling down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. I've had issues with some passengers who look like her, like certain mannerisms reminding me of past aggression. It's not a race thing. It's just my personal triggers." Morgan softened her tone. "I understand fear can cloud judgment, but discriminating against a passenger because of their appearance is inexcusable. You withheld basic in-flight service, effectively humiliating her." Cynthia cleared her throat. "Tasha, you violated our code of conduct, which states no passenger is to be refused service unless they pose a genuine safety threat. We see no evidence Miss Jones posed such a threat." Tasha sniffled, wiping her eyes. "I've never done anything like this before. Please, I beg you, I can't lose my job. I have a family to support." Morgan's heart clenched. She had hoped for an explanation that might salvage the situation, but Tasha's repeated stance, deflecting responsibility, was concerning. However, Morgan also believed in second chances. Provided real lessons were learned. She inhaled. "Here's our decision. You're suspended without pay for 2 weeks. After that, you'll be required to complete extensive retraining, including our new anti-discrimination course. If you pass, you may return to duty under a 6-month probation. One more infraction, Tasha, and your employment ends." Tasha swallowed hard. Relief and fear flickered across her face. Thank you," she whispered. "I'll do better." Morgan nodded, finalizing the paperwork. "I sincerely hope so. Sky Nova's success relies on fair and respectful treatment of every passenger." She added softly, "Don't waste this second chance." With that, Cynthia closed the folder. Tasha gave a shaky nod, tears still glistening, then stood to leave. Morgan watched her go, feeling the moral burden of the decision. She had to balance accountability and compassion. Only time would tell if Tasha truly changed. But one thing was certain: the airline had to put real muscle behind its anti-bias policies. The next time an incident like this occurred, the consequences might be even more severe. News of the incident leaked, despite Morgan's efforts to keep it discreet. A local Atlanta blogger, known for covering travel and aviation, caught wind of the story from a passenger tip. Within hours, a short article appeared online titled "Sky Nova Flight Attendant Accused of Bias Airline Owner Intervenes." The piece recounted the mid-flight refusal to serve a black woman and alleged that the new owner personally stepped in to handle the matter. Although the blogger didn't have full details, it was enough to spark a Twitter conversation. Hashtags like Hashtag SkyNovaBias and hashtag TreatAllPassengers fairly popped up, with some users demanding the airline release a statement. Morgan's phone buzzed incessantly with calls from reporters. She decided to be proactive. In a prepared statement released by the communications team, Morgan said, "We at Skynova Air deeply regret the mistreatment of a passenger on Flight 221. We take such matters seriously and have taken immediate disciplinary action. Going forward, we're implementing mandatory anti-discrimination training for all employees to ensure our passengers feel welcome and respected. We apologize to Miss Jones for her experience and appreciate her willingness to share it with us so we can improve." Public reaction was mixed. Some applauded Skynova for swiftly handling the issue. Others felt the airline was merely doing damage control. Still, the story didn't explode into a major scandal, partly because Morgan's direct, personal involvement showed genuine accountability. Also, Amira Jones remained fairly private, issuing no further statements beyond confirming she had accepted the airline's apology and compensation. Among aviation industry insiders, however, the incident became a talking point. Competing airlines used it as a cautionary tale: train your staff well or face blowback. Meanwhile, Morgan saw a spike in messages from other travelers who had faced discriminatory treatment, urging her to expand her new policies. In a board meeting held the following week, Morgan laid out the plan: anti-bias training across all departments, strengthened oversight for in-flight incidents, and a streamlined complaint system. Executives balked at the cost, but Morgan held firm. "This is non-negotiable," she told them. "We have to lead by example, or we risk letting these incidents tarnish our brand and harm people in the process." While the social media furor died down after a few days, Morgan remained vigilant. She knew that making a single example of Tasha wouldn't magically solve deeper cultural issues. Yet, she also felt optimistic. The swift and decisive handling of Tasha's case served as a clear warning: bigotry wouldn't be tolerated, and consequences were real. Over the next few weeks, sign-ups for the new anti-discrimination course soared. Flight attendants, gate agents, and even corporate staff prepared for training. Morgan intended to follow through on her promise to reshape Skynova Air, ensuring that no passenger, regardless of race, background, or personal quirks, would ever again be refused a simple bag of pretzels. 6 months after the incident, Skynova Air looked markedly different. Posters in break rooms reminded employees of the airline's commitment to inclusivity. "We serve every passenger with dignity, no exceptions." Training modules on bias recognition and de-escalation techniques became mandatory refreshers every quarter. Employees who completed the programs wore small diversity and inclusion pins next to their name tags. Morgan walked through the corridors of the airline's training center in Atlanta, greeting employees as they emerged from a classroom. She offered encouraging words, proud of the new culture taking root. Since the mid-flight fiasco, no further major complaints of discrimination had surfaced, a good sign that the changes were working, at least in part. Tasha Caldwell was among the employees who had returned to duty. She completed her suspension, passed the anti-discrimination course, and spent her probation period on short-haul flights under extra supervision. Now, she stood at the training center's exit, hesitant, clutching her course completion certificate. When she spotted Morgan, she approached with careful steps. "Miss Yates," Tasha began quietly, "I just wanted to thank you for giving me a second chance. I realized I had biases I never acknowledged. I'm still working on it, but the training helped me see where I was wrong." Morgan offered a guarded but genuine smile. "I'm glad to hear that, Tasha. We all carry biases. The point is to identify and correct them before they cause harm." Tasha nodded, eyes downcast. I truly regret what I did to Miss Jones. I hope one day I can apologize to her directly. But for now, I'm focused on doing better. Morgan placed a hand on Tasha's shoulder. Keep it up. Remember, each passenger you serve is someone's family. Treat them how you'd want your family treated. With that, Tasha left, her expression a mix of remorse and determination. Morgan hoped the change was genuine. If Tasha's transformation represented the broader shift across Skynova, then perhaps the airline had indeed turned a corner. Later that week, Morgan received an email from Amira Jones. Just took another Skynova flight. Great experience this time. Thanks for following through on your promise. Wishing you the best. Morgan felt an immense sense of relief. Sometimes the smallest gestures, like a bag of pretzels, carry the biggest symbolic weight. Standing in her office, Morgan gazed at the future flight schedules, expansions into new routes, and positive customer feedback forms. She knew challenges would persist. No airline is perfect, but the storm that erupted when Tasha refused to serve a single passenger had galvanized Skynova's mission. They had confronted prejudice head-on, and while it was painful, it led to structural reforms that might set the airline apart. As she closed her laptop for the day, Morgan's thoughts drifted back to that flight, Row 10, the hushed confrontation in the galley, and the look in Amira's eyes when she felt slighted. The memory underscored a powerful truth. Leadership demands more than strategic brilliance. It requires moral courage. And in that sense, Morgan's journey had only begun, flying the airline to greater heights while ensuring everyone on board soared with dignity. Thank you for coming along on this turbulent journey, where a simple flight exposed deep-rooted biases and showcased how one person's quiet authority can shatter injustice. In the face of blatant discrimination, Morgan Yates revealed her identity as the airline's new owner and demanded that her employees live up to the respect and fairness her company stands for. Through swift accountability, structured retraining, and an unyielding commitment to positive change, she turned a moment of shame into a catalyst for corporate renewal. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, share it to spread the message that prejudice should never go unchecked, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that illuminate real-world lessons. Your engagement helps us keep these narratives alive, reminding us all that the simplest acts, like offering a snack or extending a kindness, can be the true test of our humanity. Thank you for watching.